Inside of endpoint protection, you'll notice that we have anti-malware policies. So the first thing that we talked about was to just turn it on and install it on the client. Once we have it on there, now we can implement our policies. So we'll click on this, and we'll give it a second. And I'll right-click, and we'll create a brand new malware policy. So we'll give it a name. We'll say that this is CORPHQ endpoint protection custom policy, POLICY. And I'll go ahead and grab all of these because it adds them here. So we can look at each one. And cloud protection services, I think I'm going to leave. Is this the one that has this? No, this is okay. There's one of these, because like there's 9 billion buttons in this software. There's one of them that if you try and put that in there, it can be a hassle trying to get past it. But I think these are all okay. So first we're going to look at is scheduled scans. This is what we have over on page 643. We'll say, do we want to run a scan? What scan? We can do quick or full. What day do we do the scan on? We have any day. We have times. Do I want to do a daily quick scan? I can say yes. Daily quick scan, we'll start it here. I'm going to do a full scan on Saturdays. Start the scheduled scan only if the computer is where do we have? Run a daily check. Here's the time. Check for latest definitions before I start. You can say no or you can say yes. I like to use the latest one. Start a scheduled scan only if it's idle. So if somebody's using it, we won't scan it. You can pick on that one. Force a scan if the client computer is offline for 2 or more scheduled scans. So, hey, it's supposed to be 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, but the computer's off. Monday morning when you boot it up, we're going to go ahead and do a scan, and we can also limit CPU utilization. This is nice because it used to be any time that you do an antivirus scan, oh goodness, it would consume all your CPU. So that was a bit of a problem. The next one we have is scan settings. This is we just did scan settings. Nope, that was the scheduled scans. The next one that we have is scan settings. This is on the top of page 643. Do we want to scan email and email attachments? What about removable devices? What about network files? I usually recommend that you leave network files off because hopefully your administrators have the network servers kind of scanning themselves. Otherwise, if I say, oh yes, please scan network files, and I have 5,000 clients going up to a file share, I don't want this scanned 5,000 times. So usually you don't want them to do their own scanning on that. But if you want to. Scan map network drives when running a full scan. You can say yes or no. Usually I say no. What about if it's archived? Can I configure CPU utilization? Can I allow the clients to do it? Yes or no. And can I allow the users to control the schedule? We can say scan time only or full control. Same with this here, yes or no. So those are the options. Now what happens if I find what I consider to be malware? Ooh, so this is the default action. That's figure 14.7 on page 643. Severe, we can have either recommended, remove it, or quarantine it. By default, it's going to be quarantined. High is quarantined. Medium is quarantined. And then low, we're just going to go ahead and allow it. Real-time protection, we can say, do we want to allow real-time protection? That means as they're going through and using the systems, we are going to have the front-end protection. Look at what they're doing and say, hey, is this something that we want to allow in? So I can say yes, monitor file and program activity, scan the system files for incoming and outgoing files. If they're just sitting there, we don't care. Anything you download, do we want to look at those? What about behavior monitoring? So if I have applications that are acting kind of twitchy, they're acting a little bit virusy, do I want to monitor that? And this is very useful if I'm trying to find viruses that nobody knows about yet. But it can also be a problem in it that if I have applications that act as sort of a virusy looking thing, oh, this is for me to go through and scan all your files and find your pictures and then tag all the pictures with the appropriate names. Well, the process of it going through and dragging and crawling through your computer would probably make endpoint protection raise its eyebrow and go, maybe that's a virus. And so if I have a line of business application or a business critical application or a business kind of want to have application, and it does that, this may give you a false positive. So you may have to tweak your settings and maybe put those ones that run that special app in their own collection, and then maybe modify these settings for just that collection. So we can do that. Enable protection against network-based exploits. By default, that's yes. Allow users on clients to configure real-time protection. No. And what about unwanted applications? Against potentially unwanted applications that download and prior to installation, this is a lot of times rootkits. We'll be able to protect against those as well. Probably the most important thing, though, is that we want to make sure that we're not wasting time. So we can go through and we can do exclusions. I can put in directories that we're going to exclude. I can put in certain file types that we can exclude. So for example, I can say any BMPs, we're going to go ahead and add those in. So I can put in the paths, whatever it is that I want. We can also go in and exclude processes if we need to. In our advanced settings, we can go in and we can create a system restore point. That way, if I'm going to clean a machine and I'm going to pull the stuff out of the registry, I'm worried that maybe, just maybe, it may cause us a problem. And so I can say, hey, we'll do a restore point. Disable the client user interface, show notification messages if we need to run a full scan or a defender offline. I can also specify if I have a quarantine file, how long do I hang on to it? By default, we're going to hang on to it for about a month. Can the users make changes? No. Can they exclude files and folders? No. Can we let them view their history? No. Enable reparse points? No. Randomly schedule the scan and definition updates. That way, all the machines don't start at once. I actually like that. So if I say, hey, start scanning at midnight, I don't want everybody in my company to start scanning at midnight, because if they have to download stuff, that's going to overwhelm that. So I can put in a little bit of a change. It'll do about a half an hour beforehand. I can also automatically sample files to submission to maps, or known as the cloud protection services. And I can also allow them to modify their sample file submission settings, yes or no. Threat overrides. Threat overrides, we have this over on page 645. Threat name and override, so I can say set. And then I can go in and browse a particular threat, like I can find the name of the threat. And we'll say, oh, this one right here, this is the threat that we've had. I am going to say, what do you want to do? I can say, we're just going to remove it. Even though it doesn't say that, we're just going to do it. And I can add it. And so now, anytime that this particular problem is determined, regardless of any other settings, this is what's going to always do. So I could have things that say, oh, I'm always getting false positives on this. We're going to go ahead and say, nope, just allow it. Or we can say, hey, we always are, this is set to quarantine. We don't want it quarantined. It needs to actually be removed. That's what we've done here. So you can modify your behaviors. Cloud protection services, we've already talked about it. This is a replacement for maps. We can say join it or don't. Remember, basic membership for Windows 10 is the same as advanced membership. Allow users to modify it. What is the blocking of suspicious filters? And then I can go in and I can do extended cloud check for so many seconds. If I do advanced, same. Then we have definition updates. Now this is very, very important, because if you have anti-malware, anti-spam, it's only as good as the anti-malware engine and the definitions. And usually the engine gets, updated when it needs to be updated, but the definition files, they may need to be updated several times a day. And so by going through and saying, you know what, it would be a good idea to have these updated, we can make sure that when we're doing our scans, we're doing against the latest and greatest information, especially if Microsoft had a whole bunch of machines all of a sudden say, oh, go up to cloud services, tell them, hey, we got a new virus, and then that gets sent out, and then I can pull down the new definition. It says, oh, this particular file, we've just identified it as a virus, and now you're protected against it. So it's pretty powerful. So check how often. This is 8 hours. This is the time, we'll say at 8. That's if I do an interval. I can also do a definition update if we're offline for more than a couple of them. By default, it says no. I can also set the server. We have 4 sources that we have, but I can set other sources so we can get it from Configuration Manager. I can pull it from WSUS, Microsoft Update, Microsoft Deployment, or I can even give you an UNC share. And if I wanted to, I only want you to do an UNC share. I could turn all of this other stuff off and then say only an UNC share. So it just depends. I can also change the order, because if I can pull them from one spot, I won't pull them from the other spots. But what this is representing is Microsoft's desire that you keep your stuff updated. Because if you don't keep your stuff updated, that means that not only are you not protected, but if you have people that send files or emails out, you may be causing them problems. So keep it up to date. It's really, really a good idea. Configuration manager used as a source. What other stuff will I do if the alternative source is older than so many days? So if I can pull it from configuration manager, I will only grab it from another source if the definitions that I have are more than 72 days old. I can also do UNC file shares. I would just set the path for the file share, and then I can download those files from there if that's what I want to do. They do have a bunch of predefined anti-malware policy templates. They have these over on page 667. These are optimized for particular policies. You can use them for different features and all that. And if I want to import one of them, they show you how you can do it. So let's go ahead and show you how we could import this. We're going to go into assets and compliance. We're into endpoint protection, and we have our anti-malware policies. And what I want to do is I want to import them. So I could either right-click on it, or I could just go up here and say import. And then I tell it the files. And it knows what these files are by default. And so I can say these are the defaults in case I've deleted it. I can do high security. I can do performance optimized. I can do standard desktop. And each of these will have different settings. So for example, high security, I can go ahead and import that, and then I can go in and determine where I want this to be deployed at, but it shows you all the settings that we have, and I can go in and I can add more things if I wanted to do that. Now these are the anti-malware policies, but remember we always have two different policies. We have the anti-malware policy that specifies what we do if we think we have malware, and then we have the firewall policy. These firewall policies, these are going to be used to go in and open up doors on our firewall so that we can allow the software to come through. So you also, when you're dealing with firewall policies, you don't have the ability to import or export firewall policies. What I can do is I can create the policies in Configuration Manager, and then once they're in Configuration Manager, then I can push them out.